Hey guys, it's Cloudaven. Alright, we're back for the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard part 2. Amber, day 14, part 2. Amber Heard's on trial right now. We're continuing where we left off from earlier. I'm thinking I'm able to put the trial on screen for y'all now. So we're going to try to do that. It's part of REKEITA law screen, so we'll do that. I like his commentary, so we'll be listening to that. So if you guys don't like it, Law and Crime has it, or what have you. And this is after the fact, so I'm pretty sure he's done streaming it as of now. I think he's still streaming it.
Have to catch up on it because I was on a plane, but I'm looking forward to seeing the cross. So I'm going
to into Rum Diary. Yes, I had I was going really beautiful poetry books. That was in a John Carpenter film, and he came out of retirement to do that. And that's kind of how it was in terms of my career for those that first initial 10 years or so. It was just going from slightly bigger role to slightly bigger role and just working my butt off.
So I'm going to take you up to 2008. Did there come a time that you auditioned for the Rum Diary?
Oh, wow, that's too far.
Yes, I auditioned when a lot of the same interesting books and made me care about the twice my age and obscure feeling like, wow,
Cast for
this like deep and batted it away playfully, and he kind of playfully kind of pushed me down on this like bed sofa that was in his trailer, just playful and flirtatious, and he said yum, and he kind of like lifted up his eyebrows like that, and I just giggled, laughed it off, kind of batted him away, and moved on, went back to set.
And were you in a relationship at that time?
I was.
Okay. And was Mr. Depp in a relationship at that time?
That was my understanding, yeah.
Okay. And did anything else of significant happen during that time period while you were filming with Mr. Depp, other than what you've told us?
We just had this, it was a friendship, flirtatious thing. I felt chemistry. I felt that, we were both in relationships, and
written communications as well.
This man knew me and saw me in a way that I also too really love turquoise, and he has he loved knives. He loves a lot of things. When Johnny loves things, he does it a lot, and lots of it. So he had these daggers that he had given me that they were beautiful in design. And they're, long curved daggers. And he just talked a lot about knives, had a knife and gun collection, and was quite proud of it. And at some point, I don't really remember exactly when it was, but at some point I picked up what I thought was a really beautiful turquoise handled knife. And I had it engraved with a saying that Johnny would say to me all the time, which I, thought was romantic. As funny as that is to say now.
Oh, yes.
And
Oh, right. Because it was romantic, you dope.
Until death, hasta la muerte in Spanish.
Now, by the time that you're visiting Mr. Depp during his shooting of Lone Ranger in the June through August 2012 timeframe, what, if any, relationship has he developed with your family?
Oh, well, starting really early on, Johnny was so kind, so generous to my family, but especially my mom and dad. He met my dad, and my dad's a big personality. He's a rowdy guy, and Johnny just all of a sudden, I had never noticed, Johnny have a Southern, all of a sudden Johnny had this Southern accent and was really like buddies with him. And they really seemed to get along very well. They're, just like instantly he was giving my dad gifts. He gave him guns, he gave him knives. They had this, Johnny just really just showered my dad. And my dad's a working man, salt of the earth guy. And he was just like, floored. He's getting all these amazing gifts and being invited to come on to these locations. And, Johnny's this big movie star. And my dad was just like, I think my dad would have married him himself, not if I hadn't. And he just instantly, he gave my mom jewelry, brought her out to come and see me while I was visiting Johnny on Lone Ranger in some part of the Southwest. I think it was Colorado.
She was like
a
giddy.
Beautiful turquoise necklace. And they were definitely taken by him.
And what, if any, relationship had Mr. Depp forged with Whitney by this time, your sister?
I believe the relationship came a little bit later as they got to know each other, but he did the same thing with my sister and just really found a bond with them that, was he tried to do anything and everything he could to make them feel like special, and they did. My mom, my dad, and my sister.
What a jerk.
And what, if any, relationships did Mr. Depp form with your friends?
Well, Johnny's so generous and can be this really like overly generous almost, like showering you with gifts and compliments and just, and he has access and means to really, we're not talking about giving you a card. We're like talking about just these like extravagant trips or these extravagant gestures. And it's a lot. And he did that with my close friends. I'm relied heavily on my friends and had a pretty strong support network with them. And he really just showered them with generosity and love and light, and invited them to come to these exotic places and flew people here and there. He's incredibly generous.
So going back to the filming of the Lone Ranger, what, if anything, did Mr. Depp do with respect to a horse?
Objection leading.
What, if anything?
I can't believe that's her response.
Johnny at one point insisted on buying me a horse, and I, of course, said that's extravagant. There's no way I could accept that. That's how will I take care of that horse? It's so extravagant. So I said no, of course. Eventually, he got a hold of my dad and worked it out with my dad, like what kind of horse to buy, and then showed me a picture of this horse and said, it's yours. It's coming here. I think it was being transported, and he said, that he had my dad's help on it, picking out. And I grew up on my dad's horses. I grew up riding with my dad. So, I had resisted for I think about like a month and a half or something of him kind of bringing up the idea and me saying, that's a crazy gift. No, thank you. No, that's incredibly generous, but I couldn't accept to. All of a sudden I had a cult.
So let's take you through 2012 and your relationship. Could you just describe for the jury a little bit about how that relationship evolved through 2012?
It was always intense. It didn't become intense. It almost started that way. I when I was with him, you know, I felt that electricity in my body. I felt like butterflies. I couldn't, you know, I couldn't see straight practically. It was just, you know, I was head over heels in love. And he felt like that to me. He felt like he was also in love. I didn't feel like he was faking it. I felt like what we had, it felt like to me at the time, there wasn't any love like that, you know? I mean, and then he started to kind of do this thing again where he'd disappear and he'd come back. And I remember at first when he first started drinking, I didn't really think much of it, but all of a sudden the behavior kind of started to go in line with the disappearing, and he'd come back and he'd just be different. And I'd say something and he'd accuse me of saying something else or saying it in a different way, or he would, it was mostly my clothing at the time and me working. That was the main thing. Like, I found myself trying to not talk about auditions because it would change the mood so dramatically. I tried to, you know, he would make these comments about, you know, whoring myself out, but do so in the context of me acting, you know, and he would talk about other actresses who do my role in this way where they were worthless whores, that they were, you know, fame hungry, you know, expletive, you know, just this. The point is, it felt really dirty to be an actor. Never mind that he was one. It was dirty that I wanted to do this job that I wanted to do, and I was doing the job of an actress. It was everything every time I was walking out of the house, he would ask me, "That's really what you're wearing, kid? Oh, I see." You know, I wore a dress to an event once and I felt beautiful in it. Like, stupid as that sounds, I felt pretty in this dress I picked out, and I showed it him.
I don't know, man.
You know, it's a carpet, it's red carpet, so it's like, you know,
seems like she's performing
publicized, and I kind of thought it was weird. He wasn't saying anything about it. You know, I left him to go do this red carpet, and
sounds like she's speaking at the Feminist Voice Awards.
Did you see the you know, the event I went to? You know, basically, I felt pretty, and I thought, like, did you see that? You know, I wanted him to say something about that, I guess. And he said, well, this is after he stopped talking to me for some time, didn't tell me why. When he came back in my life, he wouldn't explain why he was acting different. He just kind of acted mad at me, didn't know what I had done wrong. And when I brought up the dress and the event, because it was an event to support a charity I was really involved with at the time, and
the ACLU, who would help me write a novel.
I said, you know, did you see that thing? And he said, yeah, I think the whole world saw that kid. That's how they'll remember you. That's how the world will remember you. I was like, oh,
what
come
event?
on.
Let's
I mean,
get the
it's
picture.
like, but it, you know, I felt good in it. I felt good. And he said, yeah, kid, that's what you're putting out there in the world. No one will ever forget that. And that's all they'll see you as. That's what you wanted. That's what you were going for. You know, my dress was low cut. I get it. It's low cut. But I felt, you know, I felt really embarrassed and horrible that I wore that. I felt like, how could I have made that choice? Of course, you know, he's right. You know, you start to believe it. I started to believe that made a lot of sense, of course. But it didn't stop with that. It was clothing in general. And when I walked out of the house, it wasn't just like, hey, you're not allowed to wear that. It was like, oh, really? That's what you're wearing. No wonder you get cast in those roles. No wonder you that's what you are. That's what you're making it. And it you know, it continued. And then there would be a blow up. And at first it was just to throw something, smash some things, loves to smash up a place, an apartment, furniture. That's what it started with. Glass. Threw glass at me, and I remember it was summer. And he just threw this glass across the kitchen, and it didn't hit me, but it shattered behind me, and I remember thinking that it like very easily could have hit me. And that calling me a whore, it didn't start with using the whore word. It was just comments until it would escalate. And then I started to notice the pattern of escalation where he'd throw glass or turn over a table. Then he would hit the wall, and then he'd hit the wall really close to my head. You know, like when I'm standing there, you know, just hit the wall, screaming at me. But then he would disappear and get clean and sober, and he'd come back and tell me that he was done drinking, he was over it, it's done, cleaned himself up, he'd done it before, and he'd do it again. And then he would go back to this like wonderful, like almost like just unreal, like but real, you know, but unbelievably nice, sensitive, kind, warm, generous, interesting, funny man that I loved. And he would make me feel so loved. Like I would feel so distant from that thing that was so scary that I would not even recognize it too. And that was how, you know, our relationship kind of started to develop in that first year.
Do you remember the first time that he physically hit you?
Yes.
Please tell the jury about it.
It's seemingly so stupid, so insignificant. I will never forget it. It changed my life. I was sitting on the couch, and we were talking. We were having a normal conversation, you know, just there was no fighting, no argument, nothing. And he was drinking, and I didn't realize at the time, but I think he was using cocaine because it was like there was a jar of cocaine out on the table. I realize that sounds weird, but it's like an actual vintage jar of it. But I didn't see him use it at the time, so I didn't really factor that in. I just, you know, he's drinking and we're talking, and there's music playing, and he's smoking cigarettes, and we're sitting next to each other on the couch. And I asked him about the tattoo he has on his arm. And to me, it just looked like black marks. I didn't know what it said. It just looked like muddled, faded tattoo that was hard to read. And I said, what does it say? And he said it says wino. It says wino. And I didn't see that. I thought he was joking because it didn't look like it said that at all. And I laughed. It was that simple. I just laughed because I thought he was joking. And slapped me across the face. And I laughed. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. I thought, this must be a joke. This must be a joke. Because I didn't know what was going on. I just stared at him, kind of laughing still, thinking that he was going to start laughing too to tell me it was a joke. But he didn't. He said, "You think it's so funny? You think it's funny, bitch. You think you're a funny bitch." And he slapped me again. Like, it was clear it wasn't a joke anymore. And I stopped laughing, but I didn't know what else to do. You know, I didn't know what to do. You would think you would have a response, but I, as a woman, had never been hit like that. I'm an adult, and I'm sitting next to the man I love, and he slapped me for no reason, it seemed like, and I missed the point. It was that stupid. Second slap, I know he's not kidding, but I don't know what else to say or do, so I just stared at him. I didn't say anything. I didn't react. I didn't move or freak out or defend myself or say, what are you doing? You're crazy. I just stared at him because I didn't know what else to do. And he slaps me one more time. Hard.
Machine gun slappy.
I lose my balance. At this point, we're sitting next to each other on the edge of the couch, or I was on the edge of the couch. And I'm all of a sudden realizing that the worst thing has just happened to me that could possibly happen to you. I realized that I wish so much he had said he was joking, because it didn't hurt. It didn't physically hurt me. I was just sitting there on this carpet, looking at the dirty carpet, wondering how I wound up on this carpet and why I never noticed that the carpet was so filthy before. And I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. I just sat there thinking, how much time do I have to figure out what I need to do? Because God, did he just hit me? No, I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to be the reality. I didn't want to have the man I was in love with. I know you don't come back from that. You know, I'm not dumb. I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone. You can't just hit somebody because they...
Doors open.
I knew it was wrong. And I knew that I had to leave him. And that's what broke my heart. Because I didn't want to leave him. I thought if I got up out of that room, I would leave the best thing that ever happened to me. And I wish I could sit here and say I stood up and I walked out of that house and I drew a line and I stood up for myself. I was just looking at the dirty carpet, trying to will myself to get up, to walk out of the door because I knew I needed to. And I really slowly, I stood up and I remember looking at him in the eye and just looking at him, frankly, because I didn't know what else to do. And before I know it, he starts crying. And, you know, like I had never seen an adult man cry. I didn't even really see my dad cry at my grandma's funeral. You know, it's weird. And he's crying. Tears, just falling out of his eyes. He gets down on his knees and he grabs my hands and he's touching my hands and he's saying to me, I will never do that again. I'm so sorry, baby. I put the fucker away. I thought I killed it and it's done. I thought I put the monster away and I've done it before. It's done. But on his knees. And I didn't have words. I didn't know what to say. I just remember thinking that it was just, he was crying. He seemed so sorry, but I knew I couldn't just forgive him because that means it will happen again, no? You know, like I've seen the health class videos, like everyone else. And I got up in my car. I walked to the car. I didn't say anything. I made a point to not say, oh, it's okay or anything like that. I just didn't say anything. I got up, I went to the car, I sat in my car and I felt like I sat there forever. I didn't want to turn the key. I just leaned my head up against the window. And I remember just seeing my breath on the windshield, you know, on the glass of the window of the door, just seeing my breath and trying to will myself to have the strength to know what I should do in this moment, because I was heartbroken.
The dirty carpet and the breath on the window are like details from a book. Like if you're
Yes, I
writing
was
a
gonna
book, you
say
try to
that.
put people there.
Yep.
This is an actor trying to be a writer.
Yes. I was going to talk about this on break.
I don't know. I don't remember what I did when I got home. I don't remember. I went to my
Choose expression is
therapist.
hilarious.
I told her
Objection, hearsay.
I
also stated as to what she may have told her.
I went home and I,
Good
a few
catch,
days
Camille.
later, started getting, I actually don't know how many days later, but I started getting calls and texts from Johnny, you know, apologizing profusely. I mean, just, you know, he said, I'd rather cut my hand off than ever lay it on you or lay it upon you, you know, and he had that way of talking. It felt like poetry. And he showed up to talk, like with the understanding that, you know, he understood I could never forgive him and it was done. So I felt kind of safe in saying, okay, let's have a talk, or, you know, yeah, we'll talk. I think I know I just wanted to see him, and he comes over, brings me gifts. He brought me a couple of cases actually of that Vega Sicilia wine that we've heard about, which is a really nice, expensive wine that I could never at that time dream of affording, you know. And we talk, and he tells me that he had put this thing away, that I could trust him, that it would never happen again. Of course, it would never happen again. That he had put this thing away. He had killed the fucker, is what he said to me over and over again. I put that fucker away. I killed that monster. I'll kill it again. It's done. I'll never lay a hand on you again. And I wanted to believe him, so I chose to.
Then the next time,
relationship.
Yeah, I did. I believed it, but you know, I believed it wouldn't. I believed that there was a line he wouldn't cross again, and that was it.
And so you stayed, correct? You stayed in the relationship.
Yes.
So, is this a good time?
No,
You want
you
to
can keep going a little longer, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
But we really
So
want the
could
dramatic
you
pause.
please describe for the jury
Is now a good time, Your Honor?
the evolution of your relationship after that time with Johnny.
I don't know how long it was until things got bad again. He did start drinking again. I remember it was almost, you know, he'd start drinking again, the disappearing thing, the coming back. He'd come back at, like in the middle of the night to my house. And it would be unclear to me, you know, drunk, often really drunk, and kind of accusing me, but not directly. Nothing was very direct. It was a lot of accusations, but they were veiled. You know, what I was wearing, who I was with, why didn't I text him back? I didn't text him back right away. This is when I was at my place in Orange. Sometimes he would show up to catch me. Like that was a pretext for coming over. And by the time we were done talking, I would have thought I had convinced him that I loved him, that I only loved him, there was no one else, and then that we were back in an upswing and would go back to good, loving, like sick, romantic love, like kind, sweet, velvety love. And then it would be something I said, why did you say it that way? You know, if I had to leave for an audition, I could guarantee that when couldn't guarantee, but 2 of those in a row. And when I came back, he was angry at me, you know, and I wouldn't necessarily know why. And then he started accusing me of things, probably like at first it was indirect and then it became really direct. Then the punching of the walls next to my head which is a constant at that time in 2012 when he was drinking. Eventually that became, you know, him accusing me of cheating. I'd defend myself. I'd say, you know, that's crazy. You're wrong. I would never, the normal things. And it would escalate to the point where he would push me. or shove me down, and then I'd get back up. And this happened several times. That's why it's not more specific, I suppose. When I'd get back up, I'd look him in the eye. I made a point of getting up and looking him in the eye. It's my way of defending myself at that time. And I'd look at him, and he'd ask me if I wanted to go again, and shove me back down. Eventually, he just hit me. Remember, he hit me in the face when I denied having an affair with my ex-wife, my ex-partner at the time. And he said he had proof. I denied it. And I was walking out of the bedroom, slapped me across the face. I turned to look at him. And I said, Johnny, you hit me. You just hit me.
I'm going to ask you, Michelle, can you bring up 1783, please?
What number again, please?
It's got a
I'm
big
sorry, what
credibility issue.
Defendants 1783?
Yeah,
of this-
she doesn't remember
none of-
anything now.
Well, none of this testimony sounds at all like Johnny Depp from anywhere else in the trial.
Do you recognize this?
Let's see what recordings they have, because I think that could
Yes, I
give
do.
her good context
Could you
if the
tell us what
recordings
it
make
is?
sense for what she's saying.
It's a picture of my face with a note that Johnny left for me by the coffee. Typically is where we'd leave notes like that.
And does this accurately depict the scene portrayed?
It was one of those scenes.
One of those?
One of those scenes.
As embarrassing as it sounds now, I don't know which scene this came from.
That's not
There was a
embarrassing.
lot.
That's
It
not credible.
escalated quickly, fast, and
Is
it
this from the
was-
Rum Diary?
became-
Anna, let me ask it a different way.
Thank you.
Is this a picture of you? Is it an accurate picture of you?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of 1783.
Your Honor, we have an objection. May we
Okay,
approach?
sure.
Yeah, like what's this picture from?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're,
She just
first of all, Your
explained
Honor,
that story.
Yes,
we-
she says it's
we
scenes, so it's
object to
made
the
up.
foundation of this. She has not
Yeah.
properly laid foundation for this picture. Is it an
Yeah.
accurate picture of you? Okay, well then we have relevance issues.
Or if they've even agreed that this picture can come in, fine. But you're not going to explain a story about how you got slapped in the face, then put a picture where your face is red and say that's where he slapped you in the face when you're obviously not laying that foundation for this picture, which is
Right.
clearly what they're trying to do.
Yep. But going back to what I was saying, and when we get to the break, I really want to talk about that novel thing that you mentioned because, as a writer, I can tell
Oh,
it's
God.
exactly what you do. So I want to talk about that. But what she's doing here for me has huge problems because this is a problem with her going so early. Only people who have laid evidence down in this trial are Johnny Depp's team. Now she's testifying to something that is completely atypical of the character that's been built over the entire testimony, and they haven't had anyone else come on and break that down. They haven't had anyone else come in and say, yeah, Johnny could lose his temper. Yeah, Johnny could do this.
Yeah, but if she
Would
doesn't
you
get out in
please
front of this, I think it's
describe
bad.
for the
later in the
jury some of the cycles you had with
They
Mr.
lost in the
Depp
picture.
through 2012.
Ooh,
So
good.
At least for now.
in 2012, the violence was pretty, relative to what it became, pretty, slapping, backhanding. Well, it went from this eggshell kind of, you're walking on eggshells, nothing you're doing is kind of right, but you don't know what you're doing wrong. And then I was doing something wrong clearly, but it was unclear within the scope of an argument what I was defending myself against. So it would shift from a rumor he had heard that I was with a friend, or I had been photographed standing too close to a male person. That was a person I had had something with, and I was lying to him about, and it would be eggshells, accusations, and then he would explode. It started with throwing things, destroying the property, and screaming at me. I remember the screaming at me was the worst because I kind of always felt like I had done, I had to defend myself. I had to tell him so he didn't think these things were true. And sometimes, he would shift accusations while I'm trying to dispel one accusation. He'd start another one, and nothing I could do to calm him down. it seemed like I'd walk away and that would make it worse. I remember in my apartment in Orange, he would grab me by the hair or he'd grab me by the arm, pull me into him, scream at me that way. He'd smash things around me. Then he would smash things very close to me. And then he would just hit me. And it started with slapping, and it got to be like repetitive slaps where he'd hold me in a position and slap me multiple times in a row. Then it would be, eventually I later would either push him off of me or I'd try to hit his hands away from me. I tried to, not in 2012 so much. At that time, I was mostly, my defense was, I'd go some other place. Like, I don't know how to describe that. It was,
you hadn't been through your training montage yet?
Stand up, look at him, try to stand up to him that way. Later, I adopted other kind of strategies to deal with it. But at the time in 2012, it was, he'd have this blowout and then he would leave, disappear. And I'd be committed to not talking to him. I'm done with this relationship. I can't take it anymore. I said that so many times. And then he'd come back, clean and sober, telling me either he had a chip. He didn't have any chips, but he would say, I've gone to meetings. I have a sober companion now. I'm doing this program. I'm reading this. I'm doing this. And he was done with drugs and alcohol for good this time. And he'd come back in my life. And with the combination of him being sober and having gone through this horrible thing where I felt like my heart ripped out of my chest, like a relationship ending is hard, I think, for anyone.
So
but
she popped a bottle of wine and did a line.
That circumstance is really painful. And so when he'd come back, it would almost
That's the evidence, right? She just kept
solution
using
to
in
that,
front of
and
him.
it would feel great, and we would be good again, and he'd be extra nice and extra apologetic and extra loving, and we'd be back in the good bubble, the warm glow. And eventually it'd get bored, and then I'd see him drinking again. When I started to get upset, noticing the pattern of the violence going with the drinking and drugs, then he started sneaking it. So it became less clear, and I'd have to look for clues as to what he was on. So I just knew how to react, Johnny on speed is very different from Johnny on opiates. Johnny on opiates, very different from Adderall and cocaine Johnny, which is very different from Quaaludes Johnny. But I had to get good at paying attention to the different versions of him. 2012, I was in
multiple personalities.
I was in the beginning stages of this, just learning these patterns. I was just learning that drinking kind of correlated with the violence.
I've never heard of him doing PCP in this trial.
Confide in anyone about these issues you were having? I think she
Objection
can
hearsay?
I think she can say if she told anybody.
As long as she doesn't say what.
Yeah, she can.
Right, right.
Not a, yeah.
Did you
What did you say? Yeah.
tell anyone?
Yes, I did.
Who did you tell?
I told my therapist. I eventually told my mom.
And let's go ahead and take a look at Defendant's Exhibit 150. 150.
Your Honor, I'm going to object on hearsay. Yeah.
Camille is all over the hearsay objections today, and she's getting ones that a lot of people miss.
Mm-hmm.
The objection she's doing is objections to Amber Heard's own statements that are made out of court, which people often go, well, if it's the person referring to their own statements, then that's not hearsay. But that still is. That's still
Absolutely.
hearsay.
Yes, it's a
One
very
of the most
self-serving
common
statement.
ones when a party's on the stand. Yeah,
Mhm.
and
Right.
and you have to keep those out because it's basically bolstering her own testimony to say contemporaneously, I told this person or I said this to Johnny or whatever. But I mean, this is always a funny thing, right? A lawyer objects to hearsay. No. Just did she tell anyone? Well, yes, I did tell someone. I told my therapist. Okay, now we're going to get to the statements that you told them. It's like, well, this was my objection, Judge. These are the statements now.
Right. And I mean, I know the fact of her telling someone is not effectively hearsay, but I mean the what she told the person is implied in the fact that she told someone, right? Like,
Yes.
because did you tell someone that you were being beat?
Well,
yes, I did.
Right.
And also, she indicated what she was saying beforehand. All this stuff happened, and she told somebody that.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, you don't really need it. Like, okay, I saw Johnny do speed. I saw him do open. She doesn't need to say, I told my sister that I saw him do. Like, I mean, I think it's a little excessive, except for the fact that they're just trying to get out the fact that what she is going to say she told her therapist is true, and it proves it's true because she told her therapist. That's what you can't get into, because that is hearsay, in my opinion.
Welcome, Andrea.
What up?
Your mic's muted on your end.
I love the whole issue of PCP now being introduced into the story.
Well, that's why I think they were specific on Johnny's side as to what drugs they were going to admit to. And I also think you admit to all these drugs. If you did a little PCP, you probably would admit that too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm probably a prude when it comes to drugs, but
they're just massive leaps in this story for me, and I think the defense needed to build the bridge to these little islands of Johnny Depp, because the story is not consistent with him slapping her multiple times in this way. There's no consistency of her going or him having any of these sobriety meetings. Like, I don't remember that being testified to at all. Now suddenly he's going to sobriety meetings. It's like either the plaintiffs or Cross would want that in earlier.
Yes.
She's creating a burden for herself. She is just creating this bigger burden to prove Johnny is the monster from the texts, when we've just heard 4 weeks of what a great guy he is, and we saw him on the stand for 4 days to make our own assessment, which to me is night and day with how it's starting for her, in my opinion.
Anyway, hi Andrea, how are you?
Hi Nick. My
Welcome.
defaults don't like your
Why-
channel, I guess.
No.
Did you decide to confide in your mother about the issues you were having with Mr. Depp?
I think I felt safe talking to my mom because I knew that she understood these dynamics and she wouldn't judge me for staying with him, for loving him, even though this was happening and was happening to me. I knew she would understand.
And when approximately did you start confiding in your mom about your issues with Mr. Depp and the physical abuse?
Objection, hearsay, compound.
I sustain as to compound.
When did you start
Too.
confiding in your mother about the abuse you were suffering at the hands
Same
of Mr.
objection,
Depp?
Your Honor. Same question.
Yeah.
I
I still think it's hearsay.
Why is
It
it?
is.
I was confiding in her from the
And
very
leading.
beginning about the abuse, the psychological abuse, the kind of control, the disappearing, the not knowing where he was, then he'd come back and then sometimes in the middle of the night, the constant accusations, like that sort of thing. I talked to her about probably from the very beginning. The fact that I was secret, I had to hide. I couldn't tell any of my friends that I was with him for a long time because he told me everyone would blame me for the split with him and his partner. So I had to kind of sneak around and kind of get brought to his house, typically in a secretive way. And then he'd come to mine in a secretive way. And it was just all very, so very isolating. And I confided with her at the very beginning on that sort of thing, and then later opened up to her about some of the violence. I did it gently. First I just wanted to have someone to talk to about how scary it was. The rage and the uncontrolled violence, the rage that this man had, and why it was
Objection,
pointed
Your
at
Honor.
me.
Hearsay. May we approach, please?
She's on it.
She's on it, and the objections here I think are really important because Amber Heard is writing a novel
Yes.
effectively from the stand. She's weaving a story, and breaking up that story is important. She's going on these long expositions about everything, and I think dropping an axe in the middle of them is good. I think they should be objecting with some frequency whenever she's doing that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take our 15-minute afternoon break. So please do not talk about the case. We're doing the outside research. Okay, we'll see you soon.
Are we going to get an argument at break?
Ooh, we might.
It was just a weird, abrupt time for the judge to do that.
It's so obviously self-serving hearsay and hiding behind her dead mother that they haven't been able to depose.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, did you hear the entire testimony?
And you cannot discuss your testimony with anybody to include your attorneys, okay? All right, so we'll be back. Let's make it 3:45, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Me, did I hear it?
Yes.
Yes, I've heard it.
Did she talk about abuse from her dad in the beginning or no?
Right, where she said she'd never been hit before.
And how great her dad was, salt of the earth, working man, that
Yeah,
Johnny tried to mimic
the
with his
horses
southern
and
accent.
stuff. While she's telling the forensic psych that dad, was apparently some type of terrible child beater.
Yeah, I was seriously asking Nick in the chat. I was like, did I miss the abuse from her dad part? And then when she talked to her mom because she could understand staying with him, I thought she was going to say because my dad was abusive. I keep waiting for it. It's like that movie where the guy lost his arm and you kept waiting for him to put it in the elevator door or whatever. You're like, keep waiting for it and it's not coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Nick, talk about the novel. Let's hear what you have to say about it.
No, you brought up the point. She did these two things, and these are what I call shortcuts in exposition. You have a limited amount of attention span, and unless you're George R.R. Martin and you're going to write like 7 million words about embroidery, what you do is you cheat your way into the reader's emotions. So she noticed the dirty floor, that dirty floor. I never noticed it before. Well, suddenly Johnny goes from this pristine, very, very wealthy, refined man talking about old novels and poetry and blues to he's got a dirty floor, more like what you would picture in a wife beater's house, right? Disheveled, disassociated, not on top of his life and disorganized. She did that. And the other one was that I could see my breath on the window, right? Like it's cold. It's not actually cold. We have no, where do they live? Fucking
They're in
Los Angeles.
Like, you know what gives it away? I'm sitting on the floor thinking, am I going to get out of here? I'm sitting in my car and I see my breath and I'm thinking, what am I going to do next? It has nothing to do with the breath on the window. It has nothing to do with the details that she's adding, but these are unimpeachable details, right? Nobody's going to be able to prove that the floor is not dirty, but if she would have said, he hit me with that lion ring and I had an imprint of a lion on my cheek and I took a picture of it, those details you can confirm, and it's like, those are damning. When you give those kind of details, you're screwed if somebody can impeach you with those. But when you say the floor's dirty,
yeah, these are narrative devices that you use when you have, especially in a short story, a poem, they do this in commercials all the time. You take little things that bring people to a spot in their own memory, so you don't have to explain where the person is, where the actor is in the scene. And she did that. To me, that's like, again, that's my own personal thing, but it is destroying her credibility for me. I believe none of those stories that involve those cheap details.
Also, I mean, to me, this is, I mentioned it sounds like an actor trying to do writing. She's smarter and a little more creative than Jussie Smollett, because I will give her credit. That's a lot more of a descriptive picture. But she's trying to paint this in a way that she thinks a domestic violence victim would describe stuff. And it's never like that when any of the trials I have ever had, on either side of the aisle. The victims never talk about, like, oh, the floor was so dirty. They talk about, oh, my God, I thought he was going to kill me and I was in fear of my life. And he just kept hitting me. There's never this artistic monologue that goes on.
It's like a commercial for a domestic violence shelter that runs on TV. Like, you can get help, right? Like, that's how it feels to me.
The condemnation from her entire side on drug and alcohol abuse is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
Did they not hear all the testimony and evidence that she spent tens of thousands of dollars a month on wine and did cocaine, and she admits to her therapist of mixing MDMA and mushrooms and her medication and alcohol and puking because she was so wasted and laughing when her therapist warned her against that? Like, that's objectively an evidence, and to condemn it like that's when the monster would come out is a miss to me. But I don't know how the jury's viewing it, obviously, but to me, all I'm thinking about is, are you really going to condemn cocaine and alcohol?
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah,
she's going to mock him for going to meetings. And, he never got a chip. Well, did you ever go to AA or NA?
Yeah.
It sounds like you like using drugs or alcohol. And she'd probably say, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm not addicted. I know when to stop.
I just
Well,
do
he
it to
asked
get
her.
over my abuse when I party with my friends to try to feel better.
Yeah, well, that too.
He asked her. He's like, will you quit with me? Will you help me? And she said, no.
Yeah, why would I do that? Why would I do that, she says.
It's really not uncommon. I've had friends try to quit and, their wives are like, well, I don't want to stop drinking wine. I don't have a problem. Which, again, their own prerogative. But, I mean, I just don't think that she should be so condemning of something that she also partakes in. Obviously, she's going to say to a much lesser extent.
Yes.
But
I'm sorry, but sommelier level 3 is not to
Yeah.
a lesser extent.
It's so funny. It's like, so wait, as you're traumatized and suffering PTSD over the rabid alcoholism of your
Alcoholism,
partner,
yeah.
you go become a sommelier.
Yeah, I'm going to go to bartender school.
That was a glorious little detail from there. Andrew, what did you think of the cross of Dr. Karen?
Oh God, what a shit show. What an absolute shit show. I'm disgusted at the quality of the lawyering that was on display there. Just completely underperformed in every way imaginable. Did nothing to undermine the basis of her opinion, despite having abundant evidence to be able to do that. Did nothing to try to flip the script on her. You know, she described all these categories of abuse. There's so much opportunity to present the evidence of Amber Heard engaging in these activities, in the audio recordings, in the text messages, all of that type of thing. Perfect opportunity to square that with Amber as being the abuser. Never went down that road. I was disgusted by this performance.
he used one, and it was really effective, the one that he used. So I don't know why he didn't use other ones. I liked his personality. I think he's kind of calm with the witness. But you can see how that can flip the other way in a trial, and everybody's complaining about Rottenborn and Elaine for cutting off witnesses. This judge lets you cut off witnesses. So these out-of-town lawyers need to get with it and say, cut these witnesses off. This is not how you do it wherever you're from. Cut these witnesses off, get the answer you want, say that's not the question you asked. I don't know if I would be quite as harsh as you were, but I do agree that he missed tons of opportunities. Tons of opportunities I thought he missed. And I thought he got some good shots. The worst one we've kind of been talking about is not getting into that open door of the prior domestic violence, which it seemed like the judge was going to allow him to. He asked one question, got a bad answer, then asked to approach and asked the judge for help, I guess. That was the biggest miss for me.
That was a big miss, and there are other things that he left on the table, given that she had indicated she reviewed all of these audios, she reviewed the text messages, she reviewed the emails. Johnny has text messages with Amber Heard's mother talking about her abusing him. He's got text messages with her sister talking about Amber Heard abusing him. He's got text messages with his security where he's begging them to come and get him because she won't stop hitting him. All of these things could have been on the table, and he just left them there.
It's almost like sometimes they don't want it to take too long or something. You could take 2 days with that witness going through all these things because she said Amber is always the victim and he, him, Johnny is always the abuser. So she opened the door to all of that. Exactly what you just said. They could have gone through the entire trial with her based on her testimony.
And I'm sympathetic to the use of time, but when you're prioritizing her frickin' PowerPoint presentation over this actual substantive evidence, that undermines her opinion, that to me, you can't justify that. You just can't justify that.
Well, and remember that they prioritize the PowerPoint presentation only for admission and then no follow-up, which like I've speculated maybe they're gonna have Dr. Curry talk about it or something on rebuttal, but still it was awkward, and it took 10 minutes of time to get this thing in for nothing.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's also really setting up a big hurdle for them in terms of just getting to rebuttal at all. You know, we have a limited time frame here. We don't know how much he's going to have left to be able to both, you know, effectively cross-examine Amber Heard's witnesses and still be able to put on rebuttal evidence. He's already got some very high priority witnesses that he's got to call in rebuttal. Jennifer Howell being like front and center on that. But now, you know, we're adding to sort of the must-haves with more from Dr. Curry, and it's just very concerning from a time management standpoint.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. So I think we are all in agreement that the door should have been opened on cross of the doctor. But do you think that when she said, "I know you can't hit a woman," that opens the door for full on impeachment?
I think so.
All I can think of for why the judge isn't letting this in is just the fact that it was an arrest and not a conviction. And we do know that Tazia Van Ree made subsequent statements where she said, "Oh no, you know, that's not what happened. It was the cop that was a misogynist and was homophobic and stuff." So she may have made a determination that there's not enough there to find that this prior incident happened. I really can't think of any other possible justification for why that door wouldn't have been opened.
But go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, but now we've got. I mean, none of Johnny's were ever result in an arrest. Number one, if I were Johnny's attorneys, I would counter that by saying there's never been an arrest for Johnny. And also, we have these experts now. Both Dr. Curry and Dr. Hughes would say, "Well, of course, Tish is going to say, oh, nothing happened. It was all a misunderstanding." That's what victims do. So I think the door's been completely open. The foundation's been set. I think they're ready to, they can go for it.
I think, Nick, it's a good last straw on the camel's back. But usually when we talk about opening a door to something as damning as this, at least in my experience, it's got to be pretty clear. And when you say something like you can't hit a woman, I think you can say that and it can be true. And you can also have hit a woman in the past, kind of how she's explaining it. You can't hit a woman, you can't come back from that. But what you can't do is say, I evaluated somebody psychologically, and one of the things I took into account is no history of hitting people when there is, in fact, a history of hitting people. That to me is hook, line, and sinker, because that's now damning evidence that we all know is a lie. That's really what you want to keep out in trial. You want to keep out things that are just categorically, verifiably false. And you can't hit a woman, you can't come back from that. That's true whether you've hit a woman or not. But I have nothing in my past, as Amber Heard, is just false. And that's what you want to correct in the interest of justice. That's why, in my opinion, it should just come in. Or they should at least be saying, you've been accused in the past from other people. How about at least that? Or if they want to say that's the change of the story, be like, you guys say cops showed up to investigate Johnny beating you. Cops have shown up to investigate you beating someone, right? And leave it at that. You know, at least something that's the truth.
This is about accusations that are presumptively or arguably false. So, you've been falsely accused yourself of domestic violence, haven't you? How did that make you feel?
Well, and the point that I've seen some people make that I think is very legitimate is when I think it was Richard Marks was on the stand and he made some comment about how, I had no reason, to know about Johnny being violent. And they're allowed to bring up this pending civil suit that this guy, Rocky Brooks, has brought against him. So that was enough to open the door there. But like you're saying,
lawsuits for Johnny have been brought in.
But like you're saying now, then with the expert saying specifically, I relied on her not having the history of abuse. Okay, let the expert explain why she discounted this, why she doesn't consider it credible, or maybe, nobody brought this piece of information to her attention. All of those things are extremely important for evaluating the basis of her opinion.
And that's what you said earlier, Peter, is that it's maybe worse if or it might be the best way to have it come about is that she didn't tell the expert about that allegation of domestic abuse, because then you get to, without being a dick to the expert, invalidate her entire evaluation by saying you couldn't have made this determination, you didn't have the evidence, and now that would completely change the idea that she was never a perpetrator of domestic abuse, right? Like it
absolutely.
it gives us. Now, I don't think she'd take the step out. I think she'd say, "Oh, my analysis is the same," but
Of course.
because she's committed to the cause. But yeah, it's
that's a very common thing to happen with experts. That's why a lot of sides argue the garbage in, garbage out method.
Yes.
Because if you can find one thing they don't know or that's different on their report, then all of their analysis is wrong. All of their diagnoses are wrong. In our cases with back injuries, radiculopathy, pain down the leg. Oh, the client said she never had it before, so it had to happen in this accident surgery. And then we find a record from 3 years ago. She complained of radiculopathy. If nobody told the doctor, now it's a lot harder to prove where it happened. Same exact thing here. You bring one thing in that changes the analysis, and it's all garbage out on the other side. So that happens, and I think juries do buy that and understand that.
Yeah, we'll have to see where it goes. Let me see. Marek Kaladziak, that's a fucking Eastern European name if I've ever seen one. Says, in Crazy Cat Lady's voice, question to Andrea. Are there any simps in your life? And if not, would you accept one? And then in Camille's voice, objection compound. In Crazy Cat Lady's voice, what, if any, simps are in your life and would you accept them?
Yeah, how is this what if any excuse for getting around the leading questions? That's just
law
ridiculous.
clerk in the back, get this judge a bench brief on what if any and how that does not change whether or not a question is leading. Like,
the only thing I can say though is that both sides have been doing that for the past several days, and now that the judge has let that in, if she suddenly is like, well, no, the magic words don't work for you, or work for you but not for them, that's where a problem comes in. But it was a stupid thing to let in. I've been bitching about it the whole time. We had the same thing happen in the Curtis Reeves popcorn shooter trial down in Florida. They would just say agree or disagree, and it's like that's still a leading question. Like, agree or disagree, this guy's an asshole, isn't he? I said agree or disagree. They actually said that. It was like, that doesn't make it not a leading question.
But in that courthouse, there is a bench brief. That's why I mentioned it. On yes or no answers are not necessarily leading. It has to have the answer suggested in the question. And you can only answer yes or only answer no, not have both sides. So that actually has been in that courthouse, in that courtroom. So that is, why they do the agree or disagree thing there. Although that doesn't matter. There's no magic words that make something not leading. It can still be leading no matter what you say in the beginning of it. The embarrassing part to me as a lawyer is that's her legal argument in response to a proper hearsay objection or whatever leading objection is, what if any? It's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah. The proper is the question does not suggest the answer because she has multiple options to answer.
I didn't suggest the answer in the question, Judge.
Yeah, it's my gosh.
What
a disaster.
It's been pretty boring. Like the whole lead up and how they fell in love was incredibly boring. Maybe that's just me, but now we're getting into the abuse, which is the interesting part, because is she going to build this mountain of he's a monster that she now has to prove? And it seems like that's the way they're going, instead of taking the simple defense, which I think is their best legal way to win. But I'm glad we're finally getting into stuff, because it was getting boring there for the beginning.
Well, so this morning I was on with Alita, and I have a $50 bet with Nick the lawyer on actual liquid tears, and I have to say I'm feeling pretty good about where I'm sitting at that point.
You almost won that bet in under 5 minutes.
In there, not a drop.
When they start blinking a lot, that's what happens.
Her cry modes are not strong. No tears produced there, and she's out of them in seconds. I mean, to me, I know there are people like that, but it looks deceptive. It looks manipulative.
She's had almost
15
years to absorb this advice from Johnny Depp about learning to be still, and she still hasn't learned it. She's still overacting.
Yeah. Set the ball and stated that she wrote the article. Well, case over. We know she did that, and we know it's about Johnny Depp. Darius Harvey, oh God, she's 1 year older than me. Kiwi Kel E says, Amber, my ex-husband is suing me for an op-ed I wrote. She just testified she wrote it, so she is responsible for its content, not the ACLU. Next, Carts. 3 minutes into her being on the stand, and she slipped up to saying the op-ed I wrote. A lot of people are latching onto that. I mean, that's going to come out either way.
An important thing is she's definitely going hard into the sexual violence, so I think the jury's more likely to believe and connect that headline to her now based on this testimony.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Please be seated. Your next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Amber, I'm going to take you up to March of 2013. Can you describe your relationship with Mr. Depp during that month? And we'll start there.
I remember that was after a period of some peace, and then he and sobriety. Johnny was sober, drinking Beck's, and my dad, who was struggling with alcohol and drug addiction at the time, had fallen off the wagon, and I remember he said, "Why don't we I want to send a picture to your dad of support," because my sister was upset with my dad, and so he poured a shot and kind of said, "Let's take a picture." I don't drink spirits, but I know that, I kind of held up in that picture. It's kind of eerie because I just think it's bizarre. He had broken this long period of sobriety that I thought was going to be the end of him drinking forever. Sounds foolish now, but I, held up this kind of glass with him, and we sent the picture to my dad because, I didn't know what else to do. And I remember thinking it was weird that he was drinking. And then the month got really crazy from that point on. It was a bit of a revolving door of accusations. He was accusing me of having affairs with, frankly, just one person. I had an acquaintance with somebody, and he was accusing me of being with them, and then he was accusing me of being with my friend, the one I had seen in Spain. I'm, in these kind of arguments, nothing I do is working. Walking out of the room is me leaving him, walking away from me. Hey, where are you going? I'm talking to you. Dudes? That it went from that to pulling me in by my arm, still shouting about the accusations. I'm trying to diffuse the situation by trying to tell him I'm not sleeping with this person and I'm not sleeping with that person. And it was kind of, as soon as it seemed as though I had convinced him of one, there was somebody else he was sure I was sleeping with. And it was a revolving door at the time. A painting I had hanging on the wall, done by my ex, who's an artist. That was one day he was convinced that was proof I was sleeping with her or having an affair with her. I didn't really love him. And all the while I'm madly in love with him and trying to convince him. So March started with this picture of him doing a shot, and he's kind of saying, "Let's send it to your dad to show support." And what I remember of March is just like it's almost like it was a never-ending fight. It was just, there were breaks in it. What kept me in it is because I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, the sobriety shoe, if you will. I kept waiting for him to get to the point where it's not supportable or anymore, and he's done with it and he's ready to get clean and sober again, because there commences a period of like pure joy. And
so let's pick the time when he's hanging out with
right after the other March.
So let me start with the painting incident. Please tell the jury what happened on that particular incident with the painting.
As I mentioned,
she just did.
The painting, which
objection asked and answered,
for months. one day he kind of stayed up doing cocaine, just drinking, doing cocaine, music, which is not in and of itself that weird in my relationship with Johnny at this point. You know, like he stays up and keeps weird hours and smokes and stuff. But he was drinking brown liquor and doing a lot of cocaine, and it was like, it became clear to me in that argument, if you will, that he wasn't making sense. He had effectively just taken, it seemed like, a turn and had decided that the painting was an offense that he could not forgive me for. It meant I was having an affair with my ex-partner, with whom I had already split, and it made no sense to me. So I'm trying to kind of quell the accusations by saying, you know, it's been there, and what are you talking about? And it's like, that doesn't mean anything. And, you know, he was demanding I take it down. He eventually takes it down and tries to burn it, but it was unsuccessful, luckily, because he wasn't with one of those normal, what do you call them, Bic lighters. He wasn't very successful at doing it while drinking, to the extent he was. But I remember it was this kind of ridiculous fight, like didn't feel like it needed to be an argument, but it seemed like nothing I could do, nothing I could say. I tried leaving. I left the room. I left the house. I eventually came back. It was like a whole night, an evening, a night, and then a morning of this. So this morning in particular, I think it was the 22nd of March. There were several incidents in March though. But in this particular one, he had something to go to. He was filming with Keith Richards and Tom Waits.
Well, let me, before you go into that part, let's pull up Defendant's Exhibit 161, which is already admitted into evidence. And I'm going to show you Defendant's Exhibit 161. And the date on this is 3/12/2013, and it's a text exchange between you and Mr. Depp. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And the first one is from you to Mr. Depp. Just thought you should know there exists a book. Is that to you? Is it to Mr. Depp from you, or it's vice versa?
It's Johnny texting me.
Just thought you should know there exists a book titled Disco Bloodbath. And then you say, we need that book. And you say, is this about last Friday night by any chance? And he says, how can you make me smile about such a hideous moment? And I'm not going to repeat the rest of it. Could you tell the jury what happened on that Friday night?
There were, like I said, there was a few different incidents in March. I believe this one happened in the Eastern Columbia building, which are one of Johnny's penthouses. They're in downtown, so a different part of Los Angeles. And we would sometimes go there. I remember he was accusing me again of sleeping with this artist, this musician who I'd never slept with. I was denying it. I barely knew the person. And then he was accusing me of sleeping with my friend in Spain. And I remember nothing I could do. He called this person on the phone and screamed at him. He didn't speak English, so he was really confused as to what he was being yelled at by Johnny. But I remember those were the accusations. That was the fight. But it was one to the next accusation. And I remember I was kind of doing that juggling act. I was in one of these fights, I believe it's this one, in his downtown ECB, we call it, loft. And we're in the kitchen living room area, and he backhands me. And, it was, he wears a lot of rings. I remember kind of just feeling like my lip went into my teeth, and it got a little blood on the wall. Just that simple. A little bit of blood on the wall. As hard as it is to explain this,
Why is it hard?
I was so caught up in the relationship and also very occupied in defending what I only could assume he believed, these accusations, that, you know, I didn't internalize, like I didn't make that big of a deal of it. I kind of pride myself on being tough, and, you know, I don't make a big deal out of
I'm not dramatic.
Smaller injuries. And I know that sounds horrible because and hard maybe to understand, but my best way to cope with it is I kind of, you know, minimize it, make sure no one, make sure he knows that I'm tough and can't knock me down, and make a joke of it, clearly. Make light.
I'm going to, Michelle, if you can take this one down and bring up 170A. Did there come a time in March?
I don't make big
Amber,
deals out
where
of
you
little
sent a
things. So
picture
therefore,
to
what
your
I'm saying
mom?
now is very important.
Yes, this is sometime in March 2013. I sent it to her because I'd been texting about some of the craziness, and
Objection, hearsay.
I'll sustain as to what she may have texted. All right, next question.
Without saying what you said in the text, explain why you were sending it to your mom.
Objection, hearsay.
I was reaching out. I was very lonely in what I was living in, and wanted help. I wanted advice, help.
Splatter blood from her face across the wall, but wait to see the bruised arm.
And figure out how I could make this stop.
And is this a picture that you took of yourself in March of 2013?
I did.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 170A.
Any objection?
I got to run,
No
but
objection.
I'll
All right,
keep listening.
170A and
It was
See you,
fun.
Peter.
Check you guys later.
And how did you sustain that bruise, Amber?
I had thrown Johnny slapped me. I walked away from him, and that made it worse. We got into a shouting match. And he kind of did this thing with his body where I could tell he was going to hit me again. I picked up I remember it kind of like a little pot, not a pot, but like a vase. And I remember I got away from him enough as he reels back. I threw it in his direction, and actually managed to get away before he got me. He grabbed me by the arm, and he kind of just held me on the floor, screaming.
He said you got away.
I don't know how many times he hit me in the face, but I remember being on the floor of my apartment.
Got a bruise on your arm, but not from the
And-
multiple.
Yeah,
Just
why are
got
you
her
worried about
face.
your arm?
I remember
Yeah.
thinking, how could this happen to me again?
Can you bring up 170?
Was the floor dirty? How dirty was the floor, Amber?
Oh my God, she's trying so hard to cry.
She just
Could they run a
can't
shark
get
on the
those
floor
tears
to
out.
clean it?
Thank you, Michelle. And
Her hair is not.
That's why you don't
flattering
get the
her
good
this
rolls,
way.
lady.
we can,
Yeah.
and just to start, it's at 3/23/2013, and if we can scroll up.
Worst screen test ever,
This is a
Nick.
text message exchange with your mom, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, let's go, scroll down.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to hearsay.
Let's wait until we get to the spot.
No, I know where you're going. We're gonna object to it.
All right, and Is this the picture that you sent to your mom on 3/23/2013?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of 170, just that picture that's on the text.
She's trying to get those tears
Hold on.
out.
With no words? For their
Well, it
conference?
says from 2 weeks ago on it.
Your Honor.
I'll sustain an objection.
Camille's like,
If we redact the from 2 weeks ago, can we admit it then? And then
keep
just
saying
have
it.
the, showing that she sent
No.
it to her mom.
May we
for the-
approach
No.
her?
Okay.
Nothing. Good job, Camille. Be hard-nosed about this.
yeah. And Your Honor, she's saying what the hearsay is right now. This is the objection. Her saying it in open court doesn't somehow make it not hearsay. It's extra double secret
Yes.
hearsay or whatever.
Yes.
For whoever is interested in the preview of cross-examination, obviously a really good source is going to be Amber Heard's witness statements from the UK. Her first witness statement does go through all these events pretty systematically. These March ones that she's talking about are ones that she's had to change repeatedly because she got the time frame wrong when she first wrote it. So she had to go back and, revise her recollections of when things occurred in order to make them add up with things like this disco bloodbath text and photo
Hey,
evidence.
Andrea. Those statements, did she have those notarized and sworn here in America or in Britain?
No, they were for Britain, and they're not sworn when she signed them, but they're sworn when she adopts
May we
them in
publish
court.
surgery, please?
Okay. So I just think if they were like sworn
And
here,
that's the picture you sent to
that
your
would take
mom
care of it.
Yes, it is.
on March 23rd, 2013.
Yes, it was from a previous fight,
Okay.
the bruise.
All right. Now, did you have any other altercations in March 2013 with Mr. Depp?
Yes, we had a couple of these fights in Orange that were around this time, one of which I started to tell you about the painting.
And I know I've interrupted you now twice on that, but I realize the jury doesn't. Can you tell them what you mean by orange at Orange?
Sorry, Orange was my apartment that I kept in Los Angeles at the time.
And it was an apartment. What type of an apartment?
I rented the top of a duplex. So it was a house with the landlord living on the bottom floor. I rented the top floor.
Okay. Thank you. Now, please continue with the painting. I'm sorry.
It seemed like nothing I could say to Johnny would convince him. He wanted me to remove the painting. And he wanted me to admit to this affair that I wasn't having. And I didn't want to admit to it because it's not true. So I held out and he just drank more and did more cocaine. And I woke up the next morning, I think it was on the 22nd or the 23rd. I woke up in the morning and the breakfast table was like cocaine and booze. And I realized that
It's a Hollywood breakfast.
Yeah, so I had a bump as well.
I wasn't going to be able to talk our situation down. I wasn't going to be able to talk him out of it. And he was just so convinced that I was fighting with him or at the reason that he wouldn't leave the house, and he had something to go film that was important, and there were important people waiting for him. And I remember people were reaching out, his assistants, his manager sister, everyone was wondering where he was. And I kept feeling embarrassed and unable to move this person out of my house. I couldn't calm him down. I couldn't change. He was just so intent on me admitting the details of this affair that I wasn't having. And me pointing out that the cocaine wasn't making his situation any better made me the bad cop. Then I'm the nag. So eventually I called my
I bet you
sister.
nagged a lot.
He had a kind of a buddy-buddy relationship with her at the time. And at the time, she occasionally did cocaine. I didn't, but she did. So I was like, hey, come take over. You know, maybe you can buddy him and talk him into leaving the house, just getting out of the house. And she did. I remember his assistants trying to get him out. Like, we eventually in the evening, I think early evening, he finally agrees to leave, but I can't tell our relationship status. I can't tell if he still is convinced of these things or if he's just going to sleep it off and it's going to go back to normal sobriety, sorry kind of phase. And he was still upset, but like seemingly calming down. So I agreed to go with him. He wanted me to go to the shoot. I had planned, so I kind of reluctantly agreed, but didn't want to set anything off. I didn't want to engage anymore. I didn't want to do anything that could be perceived as antagonizing him or engaging more. So I went with him. We grabbed the dogs. We get in the car. We're on the way there. We're headed up. Sweetser is the street. It's a major street that leads up to Johnny's houses. He effectively owns the end of the street. It's like a cul-de-sac. So we're nowhere near his home, but we were driving up this street and he has the window down, he's smoking. It wasn't all the way down, but you know, he's constantly smoking. And at some point he starts howling out of the window and then grabs two small dogs. Well, one was Johnny's dog and one was my dog, but he grabs, if I remember correctly, Boo, his dog, slightly chunkier teacup Yorkie.
Is he gonna beat
he
the
grabs
dogs?
this teacup
Did they poop in
Yorkie
your
and
bed,
holds Boo out of the window of the moving car. And he's howling like an animal while holding the dog out of the window. And everyone in the car, I'll never forget it, everyone just froze. No one did anything. And I too was like torn as to what I should do because I didn't want to do anything to cause him to react, drop the dog. You know, it was just this eerie moment where he's howling and holding this animal outside of the car window. And more than that weird memory is that I have more than that weird memory, I have a memory of everyone just kind of not really reacting to him. Like no one really kind of did anything. I eventually kind of pulled his arms gently back into the vehicle and kind of got the dog back on the seat, and we continued driving, but no one reacted. It just kind of avoided dealing with it. We get to the place, the house where he was filming this thing that he was late for, I suppose, for the day. And we walk in. Meanwhile, I've been bombarded by text messages and calls and conversations with everyone seemingly so stressed about...
Objection, hearsay.
All right.
Just don't tell us
Goes to state of
Where are
mind.
these texts and messages and evidence, Amber?
I understood
Yeah.
everyone was stressed. They
And
seemed
nobody in this car is here to testify about just
the
you.
tardiness. Where is he? Let's get him there, you know, so we get him there. And no one reacts when we get in. I mean, we walk into this house where everyone was waiting for him,
Who are these fictional
and
people?
everyone smiles and says,
Didn't you have these
you know,
people on
hey, Bob.
cross-exam?
Objection, hearsay.
Okay. So,
Sorry.
Okay. Let's,
Yeah, we heard of them.
Michelle, can we pull up 167?
Wouldn't his driver have
Wait.
been on cross-exam? Couldn't you have
Yes.
asked him about this? You knew this testimony was coming. Didn't this happen on this date?
Were one of his bodyguards there?
Be the one that's in. 167B is already in, right?
Not gonna lie, Johnny Depp coked up sounds like a blast to hang
Okay,
out with.
okay, then go ahead and pull up A.
Don't get me wrong. I would hold the Yorkies outside too.
Does your honor show that one to be in?
I'd throw them over the car
167A?
to the other window.
I think they're not skunks.
Defendants, I'm sorry.
Well, this might be your 167A, but it's in evidence as a plaintiff's number, and I'm not sure which plaintiff's number it is. I don't need it in twice, so.
I would agree. Do we,
Would you agree, Elaine?
Your Honor, I don't think it's this version of the photograph that's
So it's-
been admitted. So
So
it's
a
a
different version,
it's a
same
different-
photograph, but a little different. Is that what we're?
It's not the same photograph.
Okay, not the
All
same
right, well
photograph.
then-
Then we'll go with it. Then what
Okay.
number is it?
Do you recognize this photo?
Yes, I do.
Please tell the jury what it is.
It's a picture I took of my breakfast table that morning.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of
Oh, is this the one with the
Defendant's
tampon
Exhibit
applicator?
167A.
167A. Any objection?
Your Honor, may we approach?
Sure.
Andrew,
Here
is this
comes
the
the
one?
tablescape.
Yeah, is this the one where it's all
Which
neatly,
draft
like
of the
Instagrams?
tablescape are we going to get into evidence? Because there are.
Oh,
many.
so is this why they want? This is why she wanted to make clear that there's a different picture because these are staged. Is that what that is?
Yes, these pictures are staged.
Yeah, it looks like an
There's
Instagram
several
shoot.
drafts where items are moved around, you know, to get the best angle and things like that.
67A is in evidence. You can publish.
So may we publish that? Thank you, Your Honor.
Nick, is your nose too big, or could you do each line individually?
Remember, you said that you took
I
this
can't do
that
cocaine because
morning.
I do all
Is
of
that
it at
correct?
once.
Could you tell the jury what the box is that has the property with the skull bones, property of JD?
That's where he keeps his kill
That's
list.
Johnny's
The
drug
rings he hit me with.
box used for pills, but at the time it was bags of Coke, like dime bags of Coke.
Okay. And what are these white lines on the table to the left of that box?
That is cocaine.
And do you know what is in these two glasses that have kind of a gold colored liquor?
Yes, they're different. Actually, it's confusing. They're different, different liquids. The one in the back in the larger glass is, I believe, at the time I was doing these tabs, or Baroka, that's what they're called.
Objection, speculation.
Tablets, and anyway, I remember at the time that that's what I was putting in my water because I had just come back from France where they sell them. And then the brown liquid in the shot glass is Johnny's liquor. I don't know what it's called, but we kept it in the freezer. At the time, it was at that time, March 2013, I hadn't, I still didn't have the, hard line. I won't even keep that, in my freezer sort of attitude or posture
What?
with him. I wasn't that bold at the time, I
What?
didn't like it.
Wow.
I didn't have that strength. I kind of, at that time, I think was doing things like trying to pour it out when I could.
This is a mess.
So what is the bag, the brown bag on the left side? What is that?
That's a DOP kit. It's his prescriptions and cigarette, tobacco, weed, things like that.
Okay, and then above it, there appears to be a CD of some sort, DVD, something. Do you recognize that?
Yes, it's the single. I believe is what it's called. The single he was making at the time. And I think that's the song that they were filming a video for, if I'm correct.
Okay. All right. Now, did you end up sending a copy of this picture to Rocky Pennington that day?
I did. I sent it to my best friend at the time, and it was like, look at my
That's
morning.
your friend
Objection.
anymore.
Hearsay.
Okay, you can't say what you said, but you sent it to your friend,
Mhm.
correct?
I
Let's
sent
go
it
to
to my friend.
167, please. And is that the email in which you sent this picture to Rocky Pennington on 3/22,
Yes.
2013? Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of the picture with the redaction of the message on it, with the top with identifier redactions, and we take out the rest of it.
Oh, all right. Any objection?
No objection.
All right, so we'll do those redactions, 167 in evidence with redactions.
All right. And may we publish, please? All right, and is this the text message, the email that you sent to Rocky with this picture?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to.
Why do we need the email if we've got the picture already in
take
evidence?
you to.
Yeah.
Let's go to Hicksville. Let's tell the jury about Hicksville, May 2013. Can you tell the jury what transpired at Hicksville?
It is it's a like a fancy trailer park, like a little hotel in the middle of nowhere, set up with these little trailers, and we had made a plan to go there with friends, and we were going to do, you know, like
Cocaine.
laffy, as we said, laffy drugs, like mushrooms, eat mushrooms, sit by a campfire.
Only the little drugs.
Yeah.
Not like cocaine.
There's really not a whole
You
lot
commenters don't
to
understand
do
this.
out there. It's like a getaway. We had made this plan, and it was going fine. It was like a, you know, kind of like a party out in the desert, with a few friends and campfire and music. And I don't know somebody brought MDMA, it was being passed around, and somebody who took it kind of was starting to feel the effects of it, I guess is the best way to describe. She kind of reacted in this way where when the MDMA hit her, she kind of, you know, we were sitting around a campfire, all of us, and she kind of just leaned into me and put her, you know, head on my shoulder and kind of grabbed my arm. I took it, you know, to be the effects of the drug. And I think I had eaten a mushroom cap, but was not feeling anything at the time. I don't remember feeling anything because the night just kind of changed pretty dramatically before I really felt anything of the effects of that. But that was the environment we were in, and as soon as she kind of did this thing where she leaned into me, Johnny gets really activated. He gets really upset, and he starts, well, at first she thought he was kidding too. She thought he was kind of making a joke. I think we all did. Everyone kind of responded at first, you know, that like it was a joke, but he was like, hey man, what are you doing? You know, what do you think you're doing? And she kind of giggled and kind of leaned into me more. And I knew in my body just instantly that it wasn't a joke. But she didn't. So she's kind of still attached to my arm when he says it again to her louder. He says, hey man, you think you're touching my fucking girl? You think you're touching my fucking girl? That's my fucking girl. And he gets louder and louder. And she kind of did this thing, half understanding what was going on. I think she kind of started to cry at this point, but she kind of threw up her hands, and Johnny grabbed her wrist and kind of twisted it and pulled her into him and said, do you know how many pounds of pressure it takes to break a human wrist?
In the midst of your drug-induced days, Amber,
and he kind of held her, and she just looked frozen. And she's crying, and she was just denying understanding what was going on. I stepped in. I kind of take Johnny's arm around, kind of take Johnny's hand.
All the witnesses around the campfire, and not a one of them confirming
I don't
this.
remember if he immediately
they're all
accused
stoned out of
me
their
or if
minds
it was
too.
sometime after. I wish I remembered, but
Any of them
remembers.
called?
we agreed
Yeah,
that we'd
no, none
go
of
and
them.
talk about it in the trailer. So we walked to the trailer, and
Beach
when
friends.
we're in the trailer, Johnny, by the time we get into the trailer, Johnny tells me that I had been instigating the, like, you know, in asking for this and that I had invited it, and that I hadn't been honest with him about my relationship with this woman. And I didn't really know her
Who
that well.
was
I mean, I
it?
actually don't know her at all, but I had met her. And I remember in the trailer,
I thought we were
he
friends.
was
You
accusing me of
out
lying
there with.
about it, and that I had something with her. I'm trying to diffuse that. I'm trying to calm him down. And he just turned all that, it seemed like he turned all that rage onto the trailer itself. And he just started smashing things. He picked up something on the table and threw it right into the glass cabinet. He hit with his hand a wall sconce. He cleared the tabletop on the little fold down.
Oh yeah.
Like kitchen dining room area in this trailer. I mean, it's a
Put
trailer.
that narrative together.
There's only so much you can do. And he's screaming at me. He's just screaming at me.
This incident was so important in her memory that
And
she didn't bring it up until her third witness
eventually go
statement
back
in the
into
UK.
the bedroom area.
And doesn't know the name of this person.
He comes into the bedroom area. We had what I can only describe as
Johnny has a thing for breaking
it
sconces.
sounded like
apparently.
nonsense from him. It wasn't making sense. And I realized that he's just probably really high, because it wasn't making sense anymore. It wasn't like a direct accusation. He wasn't hearing
You were
me when I
super
was
high.
saying I wasn't involved, wasn't cheating on him. I wasn't secretly trying
We
to
can hear
engage
the
this woman
audios, Amber. We know who's
some
not
sort of
making
sexual
sense in
affair.
them.
And then it became clear to me he was like looking for something. He cleared things off the bed. I went into the bathroom, and as I come out, he asked me where it is and how long I've been hiding it. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "You know what I'm fucking talking about. You know what I'm fucking talking about. Be honest with me. Where are you hiding it?" And he kind of like makes to look into the bathroom. And I gestured to the bathroom, which was to my right. I kind of like gestured to him, and I said, like, what am I hiding, and where am I going to hide it? And we're standing in this little hallway
Your
area
acting talent.
outside of the bathroom, and he starts, what it feels like patting me down, or saying he's patting me down. I can't recall, but he ripped my dress, the strap top part of my dress. I had just dyed this thing myself.
Where's
pink,
the ripped dress, Amber?
Yes.
This is one of those things
Monica Lewinsky kept one for how many
Yeah, that's
years?
fine.
Where's yours?
finish that
Monica
dress.
Lewinsky kept that to not die.
And he's like grabbing my breasts. He's touching my thighs. He rips my underwear off.
Just sexual violence.
And then
Remember, so important.
he
Came up first time in her third witness statement.
Gotta believe them women,
proceeds to do a cavity search.
Where's the wetness? Any wetness? No wetness.
He said he was looking at
That
his
cuts
drugs.
both ways.
Literally, yeah. I was about to say.
I was wondering how somebody who didn't do cocaine and was against it, that was in and of itself causing problems in our relationship.
So you
How
don't
could
do
I
cocaine.
hide? Why would I hide his drugs from like he was insinuating that I was doing it?
Tell me you've never had a cavity search without telling me you've never had a cavity
And
search.
Yeah.
he was telling me we're gonna conduct a cavity search, shall we? Like, just shoved his fingers inside me.
Is this why you were super high on mushrooms still?
I
Still haven't produced a tear yet.
just stood there staring at the stupid light. I didn't know I didn't know what to do. I just stood there. While he did that, he twisted his fingers
And
around.
move your hips a half inch to the left, maybe?
He did, yeah.
I didn't say like stop or anything. I just
So the next morning,
She can't cry, she's getting pissed.
What transpired?
The attorney can see her getting lost, jumps in with a new
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
She's sending out that look, help me, help me.
Thinking that Johnny would change his mind.
She's good now. It's fine.
And it would be, yeah, I thought it would end differently. I kind of froze. I don't know how we went to bed that night. I don't know how I
freeze a
went to
lot.
bed. I don't know how I slept. I don't know how we woke up. I don't remember having a conversation with him the next day. I don't remember talking to him about it or confronting him about it. I remember wanting it to be okay. I remember just wanting whatever fucking weird trip, whatever trip that was to end, you know, just to be over and for it to just go back to normal. And I remember my friends were out by the pool. Like there was a pool in the center of the trailer park. And I remember putting on my, just putting on my face and going back into this like crowd, and I remember seeing my friends by the pool thinking they were just having a great time and no one knew what was, I felt so lonely. Like no one knows everyone was just having a good time, like normal stuff. So I just smiled and made a joke about how trashed the trailer got. And we had to get the manager, who started off furious that Johnny had wrecked the thing. And
Do you have
then
a witness statement
he had
from
this
him?
like black mesh